The following program, NORML Show Live, is intended for responsible adults only. We advocate for the repeal of marijuana prohibition for adults. We discuss the science, culture, and controversy about America's marijuana laws. We do not advocate or encourage any illegal activity and advise all listeners to learn their state and federal marijuana laws by visiting norml.org, NORML.org. Opinions and claims made by guests and advertisers of NORML Show Live are their own and do not necessarily reflect the philosophy and policies of NORML. Listener discretion is advised.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
From the promise of legalization.
And I think we need to rethink and decriminalize our marijuana laws.
To the agony of prohibition.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
The National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws presents NORML Show Live, Marijuana Nation. Now, here's your host, NORML's Outreach Coordinator, Radical Russ Belville.
Good afternoon, tokers and tokets. It is Friday, February 25th, 2011, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Thanks for joining us. We've made it to the weekend. We are so glad to have you here, and I'm doing the best I can here. I'm a little bit sick today. Got a fever, like 100-degree fever here, but you know me, I'm coming in. Well, I do have to just walk down my stairs, so it's not like a big deal.
Not rough on
That's right. Also joining us here in the studio, of course, is Ganja John.
What's up, Russ?
Oh, man, we had ourselves a good time. We were on the air at noon speaking with the Dirtball for an interview that we got coming up next week. So That was so cool. John went all awesome. Fanboy on me.
I did.
It was really cool. Also joining us for our virtual studio in Grastoria, Oregon is Cannabis Carrie.
Hi, guys. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, Carrie. Are you freezing up there in Astoria?
Oh, it is so beautiful. I always say that living here is like living in a postcard. It's so true today. The sky is blue. There's a little bit of white on the ground, and I wish you could all be here with me right now.
Oh, it's a beautiful place here. On today's show, we got all sorts of great stuff coming up for you. Of course, today is the fourth Friday of the month. I know a lot of people look forward to that because that's when we have our Cultivators Corner with High Times Magazine's senior cultivation editor, Danny Danko. He'll be in at 1:30 here, half past the hour in the Pacific time zone, and we'll be taking your live calls and chat questions on cannabis cultivation. Whatever you want to know, Danny Danko will be answering that question today at 1:30. It's also Rockin' Friday, so Herb Age is going to join us. Herb Thrasher, that is, from Herb Age Designs. He's going to join us with a group called Slew Feg. Weird name, Slew Feg, a song called Insomnia. Don't know about that one. And also, at the end of the show, we'll have a preview for next week, which is one of our rockinest weeks ever at this show. Oh, next week's going to be off the hook, so stay tuned. At the end of the show, we'll talk about that. But before we get to all of that, we do our hemp headlines with Cannabis Carrie. What's in the news today?
Well, today we're going to cover a Washington dispensary case, also an opinion for Arizona lawyers. We're going to go to Iowa and discuss the fate of their medical marijuana bill. And, you know, I love to inject this every once in a while. I have a story from some protests outside of North America. I like to show that this struggle, this time in history, it's not just about North America, but this is happening all over the world right now.
Right on. We'll get some world news stories from Cannabis Carrie coming up in the hemp headlines. Also for today's show, in hour 2, we're going to hand the reins over to Ganja John because I think about 60 minutes is all you'll be able to get out of me today. It's going to be a rough one. Stay tuned, folks. We'll be back right after this.
You're listening to NORML Show Live, the voice of the Marijuana Nation.
In today's busy world, we're inundated by advertising for all types of pharmaceuticals that come with a laundry list of potential side effects. Shouldn't you have better medical choices? Natural alternatives to pills pushed by Big Pharma? At Alternative Medical Choices, you could choose natural, safe, and effective alternative therapies that are right for your budget without nasty side effects. Cannabis, or marijuana, has been a legal medicine in the Pacific Northwest since 1998. Our doctors will help determine your qualifications for a medical marijuana recommendation in Oregon, no matter where you live. Our massage therapists will ease your aches and stress with soothing hemp seed oil or cannabis-infused massage salves. We also offer acupuncture, Reiki, and other alternative health therapies. Call Alternative Medical Choices in Portland, Oregon at 503-288-5579 or visit our website at www.altmedchoices.com. We specialize in out-of-state recommendations. That's www.altmedchoices.com or call 503-288-5579.
NORML National Conference 2011, Denver, Colorado, April 21st through 23rd.
I'm not a crook.
When President Nixon declared war on marijuana smokers, NORML was founded by a young lawyer named Keith Straub. And now, in our 40th year, NORML is coming of age as states begin discussing outright marijuana legalization.
Entirely legitimate topic for debate.
Join us in Denver, Colorado, the day after 420 for our 40th annual national conference. You'll learn about marijuana law, cannabis science, and the grassroots activism necessary to end prohibition. Set in the Mile High City, America's cannabis capital. Special guests include medical marijuana pioneer and Harvard emeritus Dr. Lester Grinspoon, U.S. Congressman Jared Polis, and NORML founder Keith Straub. NORML National Conference 2011, coming of age in Denver, Colorado, April 21st through 23rd. It's the true Rocky Mountain High.
Medical marijuana, industrial hemp, consumer cannabis. It's time for this week's NORML News with Cannabis Carrie.
In Washington state, charges against two owners of a Tacoma medical marijuana cooperative have been dismissed this week. Pierce County prosecutors filed charges last year against two men who operate Club 420. In May, they charged Guy Casey and Michael Schaaf with 5 counts of unlawful delivery of a controlled substance and 1 count each of unlawful possession of a controlled substance, along with the unlawful manufacture of a controlled substance and possession of a controlled substance with intent to deliver. Prosecutors alleged in court documents that the men were selling marijuana to people not authorized to have it and that they kept a larger than allowed by law amount of medical marijuana on hand, and that they charged exorbitant prices to enrich themselves. But much of the case was based on the testimony of the confidential informant who claims to have witnessed all of those crimes. But Deputy Prosecutor Jennifer Sievers filed paperwork on Tuesday dismissing the entire case against Casey and Schaaf, saying that after further investigation, she had doubt as to the veracity of the confidential informant that fed information to the police. In court papers, Sievers said, quote, "The informant was the basis for this investigation and is an essential witness for the state." After receiving the tip from the informant and getting a warrant, agents from the West Sound Narcotics Enforcement Team raided Club 420 and both homes of the men in May. At the time of the raid, the narcotics team put out a news release that said in part, quote, "The club appears to be making thousands of dollars in unreported tax-free income from selling drugs to persons who may not qualify and profiting from taking advantage of those who do have a legitimate and authorized medical need to use marijuana." Both defendants have been out on bail since the charges were filed last year, and both were getting ready for a scheduled April trial to face the serious charges against them. Casey's lawyer, Aaron Pelly from Seattle, said that his client is very relieved to have the case dismissed and said that it has been their position all along that they were getting bad information. He said that because of that, Casey was never going to make a deal and has always intended to go to trial. Jonathan Schaaf told the News Tribune after hearing about the dismissal that he is happy that the deputy prosecutor saw through the lies of the informant and criticized the narcotics team for basing their entire case on the man's false reports. He said that the investigation has been a hardship on both he and Casey, causing them serious problems both emotionally and financially. Since the raid, though, the cooperative has continued to operate successfully and even has recently opened a second location. He said he owes that to a lot of good support from the community.
Yeah, this use of snitches in our legal system is just another stain on justice in our country. This is just the latest case to show that. You got to understand that when we're asking these people to trust confidential informants, you're oftentimes asking to trust someone who has an ulterior motive, that has something in it for them. And more than one time, we found these confidential informants to be lying in order to get off on their own charges. So it's something that is a definite problem in the war on drugs. And the sooner that we can legalize in Washington, either with House Bill 1550 or with the Sensible Washington Legalization Initiative, the better off we will be and the better off our justice system will be.
The State Bar of Arizona Professional Conduct Committee has released an ethics opinion for lawyers in that state. The opinion says that lawyers in Arizona can help clients set up medical marijuana businesses despite the federal laws that bar possession or sales of marijuana. Arizona lawyers can provide advice on the state's medical marijuana law and help a client set up a dispensary as long as certain requirements are met. At issue is whether a lawyer can assist a client who wants to engage in conduct that the lawyer knows to be criminal or fraudulent. Federal law bars the manufacture, distribution, and possession of marijuana with intent to distribute. The committee opinion also discussed the U.S. Justice Department memo that declared they wouldn't prosecute patients or caregivers who are in compliance with state medical marijuana laws, like the new law in Arizona, although they may prosecute if there are other unusual factors, such as suspected money laundering or illegal sales to minors, or those without medical marijuana recommendations. The ethics opinion acknowledged the dilemma for lawyers and said that any lawyer who wants to provide medical marijuana advice or cannabis-based business advice must first warn the client about the federal implications or recommend that the client seek other legal advice about federal requirements. After a client has received a full disclosure of the risk involved with the federal rules, then the lawyer may help the client comply with the state's medical marijuana law. The opinion warns that its conclusions may be different if a court strikes down the state law or the Justice Department changes its enforcement policies.
Well, okay, and this is again that dilemma of the difference between the state and the federal law. Of course, in Arizona, defending these dispensaries and counseling these dispensaries would be completely legal under Arizona law, the way the law is written there. But under federal law, it's not. And so you got the situation where lawyers are having to tell them to do something that's legal under the state law, knowing that it's illegal under federal law, and that can be an ethics issue. I do think they came up to the right decision here, though, and that is, let them know what the dangers are, let them know that there's a federal problem with this. But once that's all been acknowledged, let these lawyers counsel these people on what the Arizona law says.
A Democrat senator from Iowa has stepped forward as a friend to medical marijuana advocates in a state whose voting population has become increasingly in favor of allowing medical marijuana. Senator Joe Balcom from the Clell-Bodler state says that the other states have moved forward with medical cannabis, and he said that he thinks Iowans are ahead of them on this one. He said the latest polling in Iowa shows approximately 64% of them believe that chronically ill patients should have access to this form of medication. Senator Balcom is on a 3-member Senate subcommittee that heard testimony this week and have endorsed a measure to legalize medical marijuana in Iowa, a big step for what is now known as Senate File 266. The bill would establish a medical marijuana act that would allow possession and use by qualifying patients that had been diagnosed by a physician with debilitating medical conditions that include cancer, glaucoma, hepatitis C, HIV, Crohn's disease, and a few others. It would establish a registry identification card system to identify those patients. Senate File 266 would also authorize the creation of nonprofit dispensaries that could cultivate, manufacture, acquire, possess, sell, or dispense marijuana to qualifying patients. 2 of the 3 members of the Senate subcommittee endorsed the bill Thursday afternoon, but Senator Balcom says he just doesn't see it passing the full 50-member Senate this year. But he does say that the bill gives advocates a chance to talk to legislators from all around the state and convince them that this measure makes sense for Iowa. If the measure were to pass the Senate, it would have to face the Iowa House and then the governor. One member of the Iowa House, Representative Clell-Bodler, faced ethics charges last month for traveling to California, lying to a physician, and obtaining a California medical marijuana card, all to make a point in Iowa against the measure, a stunt that he is calling a fact-finding mission. He has promised that the issue would stall in the Republican-controlled House if it somehow managed to win Senate approval. Representative Bodler, a former state trooper, is the chairman of the House Public Safety Committee and has called the measure a waste of time time and paper, adding, medical marijuana, not on my watch, never. The measure would have to clear the Senate Human Resource Committee next week before the March 4th deadline that sidelines policy bills from further consideration this session if they have not cleared at least one standing committee in the House or Senate.
Representative Clell Bodler rears his ugly head again. Man. You know, when I think of Clell Bodler, I want to make something really clear here, folks. I do not at all wish for Representative Clell Bodler to come down with cancer or some serious disease where medical marijuana might be the only remedy that would help him. That would be cruel of me. That would be mean of me. But it would be no more cruel or mean than what Representative Bodler is doing here by saying, not on my watch. He's basically turning to the citizens of Iowa and saying, if you want to treat your condition with medical marijuana, you've got to move out of state. And before long, we're going to start to see a drain of people leaving these states that are continuing to be ignorant about medical marijuana, and people leaving to go to states where medical marijuana is legal. I'm proof positive of that. I left my family, my home, everything I knew in Idaho because my wife needed medical marijuana. And I wasn't going to risk her going to prison in order to treat her migraines with a simple herbal remedy. It's just ridiculous. But this is good news in Iowa in that the steps continue. We continue to move forward in Iowa. We got a lot of listeners in the state of Iowa who are doing some great activism work out there. Don't get discouraged by Bodler, by the Republican Senate. Don't get discouraged. These things take steps. You have to move it out of a committee. You got to move it into the House. You got to have the discussions on it. And you may lose 3, 4, 5 times along the way trying to get this done. But every step along the way, we get closer and closer to the eventual goal. And one of the hardest things here with respect to the Iowa case and Clell Bodler's fact-finding stunt is the fact that so much of the discussion now over medical marijuana is based on hearsay and assumptions by some of these lawmakers. These lawmakers who see the inflammatory stories coming out of California, who see the pictures of the girls in the bikinis on Venice Beach with the, get your 420 recommendation signs. They see that, and they think that's what medical marijuana is. They think that's what it is everywhere. When in fact, in the other 14 states that recognize medical marijuana, there are varying levels of restrictions on it and makes it very difficult to actually get a card unless you truly qualify for it. The Iowa law being proposed here is exactly one of those kind of laws. Strict condition lists, being reviewed by a doctor. This is not California-style medical marijuana, and the sooner the people of Iowa, especially the legislators in Iowa, can have a rational discussion on what's actually in the bill, the sooner we pass it in Iowa.
And yesterday, demonstrators outside of the Supreme Court in Uruguay protested the criminalization of marijuana possession, holding signs in downtown Montevideo and chanting "No más presos por plantar," or "No prisoners for plants." Members and supporters of the movement for the liberation of cannabis were protesting the arrest of Uruguayan author Alicia Castilla, who wrote the book Cultura Cannabis, and another Uruguayan artist. Both were arrested for possession of marijuana in their residences. The movement supporters want the Supreme Court to address the ambiguity of Law 14.294 that punishes traffickers and prohibits the cultivation of cannabis, but exempts those that hold a reasonable amount exclusively for personal consumption. They no longer want the police to be able to decide what that reasonable amount is. Late in 2010, Uruguayan Congressman Luis Alberto submitted a bill to Parliament to decriminalize the cultivation and harvesting of marijuana for personal consumption. He told media sources, quote, "My generation lived and lives with drugs, unlike our parents or our grandparents, so it just isn't a taboo subject." He added that Uruguay's narcotics law is completely contradictory. Others in the ruling party, Frente al Pleno, a collective of left-wing political parties, say that they do want to set a limit of 25 grams and 8 plants in the home as a reasonable amount in order to provide legal certainty for citizens and to protect them from being prosecuted as a trafficker. The latest survey results composed by the Uruguayan National Drug Board found that marijuana is the most consumed drug in Uruguay. Now, this was from 2007, and that survey of about 200,000 people found that about 12.5% had experimented with marijuana.
Well, great story coming out of Uruguay there, and I love hearing about people protesting, and it's interesting that the arrest of that author was what set this off. What happened in Egypt as well got set off by a marijuana case, and it's oftentimes that these can be the sparks that get these kind of protests started. With respect to the term reasonable amount, Always fear any marijuana law that mentions the words reasonable amount. This is what we had up in Washington State with their medical marijuana law. They said patients could have a reasonable supply for 60 days, whatever constitutes a 60-day reasonable supply. Well, in King County, that turned out to be a whole lot of marijuana. In some of the eastern counties where they hate it, it turned out to be not that much. You gotta have a firm limit, a firm line in there, a number that is put down into the statute so that there's no argument over what's considered reasonable and what's not considered reasonable, because what the cops think are reasonable and what the patients think are reasonable are two completely different figures. It's important as we move forward in our marijuana legalization, in medical marijuana legalization, to take out all the uncertainties, to make sure that people can understand how to follow the law, what the letter of the law is, and so they can know what their limits are and not go to prison.
I don't know how you do it, Russ.
I'm a machine, man. Yeah. I'm a legalizing machine. Ain't no fever gonna keep me down. We'll be back right after this with Herb Thrasher. Gonna rock.
It's 20 after the hour, and we have to take a short break, if you know what I mean. Please support these sponsors who support NORML Show Live.
Oh, have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. Have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. If he said he swam to China, he would say to South Carolina. Then you know you're talking to that reefer man.
When I was in England, I experimented with marijuana a time or two, and I didn't like it. And didn't inhale, and never tried it again.
I think you'd probably be a lot cooler if you had, Mr. President.
Said, hey, do you have it going, kids? Sure would be a lot cooler if you did. Lie, don't hide it. Oh, lie, don't hide it. Just lie, don't hide it. Find love right now.
NORML Show Live reminds you to never consent to a search. If you're holding and you consent, in most states you will be arrested immediately and you will go to jail. If you don't consent to a search, police may try to intimidate you by threatening to bring in drug-sniffing dogs or try to fool you by saying things will go easier if you consent. Yeah, easier for them, sure. Stand your ground, refuse the search, and ask the officer if you're free to go. If they still detain you and eventually find your contraband, you'll be no more busted than if you had allowed the search. But by refusing the search, your attorney has a chance to win your acquittal before a judge. If you consent to the search, your attorney's hands are tied. You can find a list of NORML Legal Committee attorneys specializing in marijuana cases by visiting the Find a Lawyer link at norml.org. It's time for your Daily Toker Tunes, the best in 420-friendly music from all genres that uplifts, entertains, and informs the public. Our PodSafe music is donated by freedom-loving musicians who support our goal of ending adult marijuana prohibition. Today we take you into the weekend with Rockin' Friday, our segment featuring the best rock, metal, punk, and jam band music, brought to you by Herb Thrasher at herbthrasher.com. If you'd like to submit your song to be played on NORML Show Live, send it to us at stash@norml.org. Now, here's some great independent marijuana music for today's Daily Toker Tunes. All right, folks, we made it to Friday, and that means we get a turn to our own resident rocker, Herb Thrasher. How you doing, Herb?
All right, man. How's it going in the stash room today, guys? I hear you're not feeling too good,
I'm having a hell of a day, my man, but I think I'll make it.
Well, that's too bad, man. I was going to come by and bring a whole bunch of good stuff, but since you're not feeling too good, I'll just have to go somewhere else.
Oh, no, it's the worst time to get sick.
Right on, man. Well, before we get to rocking, though, I bring a shout-out today, man. And I want to give a shout-out to all the Oregon cannabis activists that went to Salem on Wednesday and rock and rolled. I know you guys have, Russ has been talking about it, heard a little bit about it, but they really did. They went out there and they really made a difference and kicked some butt. And I don't know if you know or mentioned this, our very own chat room resident there, Jennifer Alexander, she did a tremendous job. I've been seeing a lot of great emails on her. And I just wanted to give a shout-out to all the activists out there. Keep it up. And this rocks for you. So, and Don't be butchering slow fag, dude. It's slow fag.
Slow fag,
No
okay.
Slew.
Okay.
Slow fag. All right, slow fag, also known as the Lord Weird Slow Fag, is a heavy metal band that formed in Pennsylvania in the early 1990s and is currently based in the San Francisco Bay Area. The band released their self-titled debut album in 1996 and is currently signed to Profound Lore Records and most recently released the Animal Spirits on October 26, 2010. The slow fag sound has often been compared as a fine mix of metal and rock masters Black Sabbath and Blue Oyster Cult. The song Insomnia off the hardware.
Lose him?
I think we lost him. Oh, the cell phone went out on us. All right, well, this is Slew Feg with Insomnia.
Now my eyes are seeing faces in the darkness, and my mind is seeing darkness in the night. The silent specters that only come out in the night. While I'm drowning on the blood of your survival, if you're busy making nightmares of your dreams, my violent laughter is only drowned out by your screams. Oh! And where there's peace of mind, you know there's always lies. Another victim of your self-protection. When you ask if I'm afraid of seeing zombies, it's the walking animations that I fear. The silent spectre's just waiting for sleep to appear. And when people ask me why I'm always grinning, it's because I'm seeing faces in the walls. The silent shield of insomnia finally falls. And when there's lies, you know there's always peace of mind. Now that this mutant race has left you all behind, another victim of your self-protecting
Check out the Daily Toker Tunes at the Stash blog by surfing to stash.normal.org and choosing Media and then Toker Tunes from the main menu.
Starfish Designs, makers of the original Gandalf.
I'm Radical Russ, and when I want to relax, I always have my 17-inch long original Gandalf from Starfish Designs nearby. The hand-blown borosilicate glass is strong and easy to clean, and the design is sleek and sophisticated. Starfish Designs are available from Bend, Oregon at a glass retailer near you. For locations, call 541-788-GLASS. That's 541-788-4527.
High in the Rockies, for the first time ever, High Times is hosting the Medical Cannabis Cup in the Mile High City, Denver, Colorado. Come to the High Times Medical Cannabis Cup. There'll be cultivation seminars with High Times editors Danny Danko and Nico Escondido, plus other experts and cannabis celebrities. Attend activism seminars with leaders of the medical marijuana movement, including advice on how to start your own canna business. Meet industry leaders in medical cultivation, hydroponics, smokable glassware, hemp products, dispensary supply, cannabis accessories, and more. Plus, Medical Cannabis Cups will be awarded to the best indica, sativas, concentrates, and edibles entered by legally operating medical marijuana dispensaries and growing collectives. And don't forget Saturday night when the Medical Cannabis Cup will host the extravaganza with surprise musical guests. The High Times Medical Cannabis Cup, April 2nd and 3rd, 2011 at Exto in Denver, Colorado. Visit medcancup.com for details. Be part of the growing cannabis industry. Come to the High Times Medical Cannabis Cup in Denver.
Mary, quite contrary. How does her garden grow? Don't ask me. I'm just the voiceover guy. Ask High Times Senior Cultivation Editor Danny Danko in our Normal Show Live's Cultivators Corner.
All right, folks, we're glad to have Danny here on the show once again. This is the first show that we've had since Danny sent us the High Times Field Guide to Marijuana Strains. So, Danny, we wanted to start off by thanking you so much for the books.
Oh, wow, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. I was very happy to send you guys out a copy and, hopefully have you guys say a kind word or two about it.
Well, I found out that I've been flowering my hash plant too long.
Oh, really?
Yeah, from the book, and I harvested a little earlier this time, and it's looking a lot better.
Well, that's good.
That's cool.
Thanks to the book, so thank you.
Hey, Danny, where can people pick up a copy of the Field Guide?
Well, they can get it from our website, hightimes.com or headshop.hightimes.com. It's also on Amazon and Borders and all those book websites, but High Times is probably the best place to get it.
All right. Well, folks, we're taking your live questions here for Danny Danko in our Cultivators Corner. The phone number is 971-533-7111, or you can just send them in via our chat room. Let's get it started. First of all, we have a question from Anonymous wanting to know, topping or super cropping? What's the best way to keep your height down when growing inside?
Well, both methods will basically topping. Super cropping is basically just an advanced technique of topping. So anything you can do to keep vertical growth to a minimum is great, whether it's bending branches, especially bending the main branch, which will make all the other branches actually behave more like a main branch, which will get you a lot bigger of a yield. So, anything you can do. There's also the fimming method, which is the Cushman thing about where you don't actually break off the tip. You just take a piece of the tip, like 50% or so of like a growing shoot, and you pinch that, and then you get like 3 or 4 new shoots from that node. So, I definitely recommend topping and super cropping, anything you can do to keep plants shorter if you're going to get a bigger yield in the end.
Okay. And neither one of them is really any better than the other? It just depends on circumstance?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on circumstance and how long you plan on vegetating the plants for in that vegetative growth stage, and also whether it's a sativa or an indica, because sativas tend to be a lot stretchier than indicas, so a lot of times you'll have to train those in particular.
Okay. We have another question here from Stoned Kidney, wants to know, what's the deal with Mercurose makers claiming it will stop powdery mildew? And I've never heard of the Mercurose, so I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the exact company, but claims about stopping powdery mildew are probably pretty well exaggerated, just because powdery mildew is a really tough thing to get rid of. I typically would recommend not just some fungicide type sprays like what we're talking about, but also perhaps a sulfur burner that would actually burn sulfur in the air and changes the pH on the surface of the leaves, makes it more difficult for the powdery mildew to get a foothold. But that also comes with its own problems and issues. So I would be wary of any kind of products that claim to, completely get rid of powdery mildew, because it's really that's really a difficult thing to do without a regimen of ways of getting rid of it.
Danny, I was on the show the other day doing a ganja gripe, they called it, about growers, and I had a grower who I gave some clones to, and I asked him how they were doing. Gave him the clones about 4 or 5 months ago. He said, they're not done yet. I just put them into flower. And, kind of a grow horror story, especially grown in intent. What is do you have any horror stories from seeing different grows from around the world?
Well, definitely, if it's taken him 5 months, just to get to where he can flower them, then there's got to be something horribly wrong, because over 5 months of vegetative growth, you could have, like 20-foot tall bushes at that point. There's all kinds of horror stories, and, a lot of times places where I'll be going to do like a feature article and realize, I can't even cover this space. People have varying degrees of what they think is successful. Mm-hmm. I guess, to put it nicely.
Yeah.
All right. I wanted to say, hey, this upcoming Tuesday is the 40th anniversary of the founding of NORML. Am I right?
Yes, absolutely.
That's exciting. We're definitely going to do some stuff on our website to promote that, and I love the whole Peter Tosh thing.
Oh yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, at the end of the show here, we're going to talk about next week's shows and the whole NORML 40th birthday celebration. We do have a caller on the line from the 817 area code. 817, what's on your mind with Danny Danko?
Yes.
Oh, wait a minute. He's calling back. He's calling back again. We just lost him, and now we're going to put him back. 817, you're on the air. What's your question for Danny Danko?
What's your question?
Well, sounds like...
Hello, 817, you're on the air. Okay, you're not on the air.
Well, you know what? Maybe this will give me the opportunity here, Russ, to give you guys a world exclusive here about our Medical Cannabis Cup in Denver.
Yeah.
The ink isn't actually dry yet, but I'm pretty sure right now we have it as musical guests to be announced. But I'm pretty sure that we've got Kid Cudi performing that Saturday night.
My head just exploded
in Denver. So I don't want to blow up any spots or anything, but it looks like that's going to be our headliner for that party. And right now, I mean, it's 2 days of seminars and expo, and there's that party and all that for $100. So I definitely recommend people check out medcancup.com and get those tickets with the VIP concert tickets if you want to see Kid Cudi do a nice exclusive High Times performance there in Denver for us. So and that's that just happened today. So
I'm on the line with Danny Danko.
Hey, sorry, Danny. We do have a caller on the line from 317. This is 313 calling in. What's your question for Danny?
My question for Danny is, I would want to know, how would you go about starting off to grow a plant? I'm talking closet growing. Like, I'm a college
starting off a closet grow.
Yeah, what are the best ways to get started on a closet grow, I guess, is the question.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to need a grow light for sure, and you're going to need, whatever the medium is that you plan on growing your plants in. So, and some air circulation. Those are really the three major things that you're going to need. And so, once you get started, if you have the proper light and the proper air circulation, you should be okay in the closet. The big thing about closets is that they're contained and they heat up pretty quickly. So you just got to be sure you can cool it down if it gets too hot. But if you're using a 250 or a 150 or fluorescence or something, you shouldn't have a problem with heat. So
okay.
I guess beginners should really start with the smaller wattage of grow lights, and not to risk increasing heat too quickly.
Okay. We have another caller calling in from 740 area code. What's your question for Danny Danko?
Yeah, I'm wondering if I can, in my grow area, during bloom, it's 12 hours on, 12 hours off. The last 4 weeks, can I go ahead and start my new plants, 12 grow, for the vegetative 12 and 12, and then switch them up to 24 after that?
Well, if you're talking about regenerating the plant, basically, typically, you start with an 18 or 20 hour vegetative cycle, and then you switch to a 12-12 to flower the plant. So once they're done flowering and you've harvested the plants, it is possible to go back into a vegetative state if you leave some leaves on there and you don't actually cut the whole plant down, and then you can get it to go back into a vegetative state. But I would only recommend that if you were trying to save the genetics of that plant in particular, because otherwise it's kind of a lot of trouble to go through for not much gain.
Yeah, I was just trying to do that to get like about 4 weeks start on my plants.
Yeah, I mean, if they've only been flowering for 4 weeks, then you still have at least another month, if not more, time to continue in the 12-12. And if you do anything about changing that light cycle, you're going to end up shocking the plants, and they're going to behave in weird ways, like possibly hermaphrodite or twisted leaves and all kinds of strange behavior that happens when plants get shocked.
Yeah, I just wonder if I can start my seeds in with the last 4 weeks of the harvest.
Oh, I think what he's trying to say is if he could start seeds in the last 4 weeks of like the 12-12 cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can do that. They're not going to get as much light as they actually need, so your best bet would be to have them in that 12-12 area when the lights are on, and then possibly transfer them into an area with lights for the other 6 or so hours a day that you'd want them to, because you want them to stay in the vegetative stage. You don't want them to just immediately pop open and start flowering. So you can pop seeds in a flowering room, but I would recommend taking those plants out and giving them light, artificial light or even sunlight at a time when they're not, in the dark stage of that 12-12.
Yeah, I always recommend a small space with like a T5. T5s are cheap, and you can do vegetative or clone growing in a tiny little closet with a T5.
No, yeah, totally. You really don't need a lot of space, and you don't need a lot of light either, because you're not really trying to produce a lot of growth and flower growth or anything like that. You just really want to just keep the plant alive.
Yeah. All right, we've got a question from our chat room. Wyatt the White Boy wants to know, first of all, how many strains are in the High Times Field Guide to Marijuana Strains, and how many have you smoked?
Well, I would say in the book, I think it's about 132 or so, maybe 134, somewhere around that. And I smoked every one of those that's in the book, and probably a substantial amount that aren't in the book, because really there's thousands of different strains out there in the world. So it'd be hard to put an exact number on it, but I'd say out of the 130 or so in the book, I smoked those all, and then many others that actually didn't make the book. So. It's a fun gig.
Yeah, it's not the worst job you can have, huh? Hey, we had a question from Damon Alexander in our chat room who was talking about how he makes a fertilizer mix with worm castings, and he's wondering if there's any other sort of amendments, any nutrients, anything extra he should be adding to that.
Well, you can add almost anything to a compost tea sort of thing that you're doing. You can add guanos, bat guano or seabird guano. You can add molasses. Sometimes, the sugars help the beneficial microbes to reproduce and feed and create more beneficial microbes. So Pretty much anything of a natural organic stage, like you can add seaweed extract, liquid fish, guanos, like I said, bat guano or seabird guano, molasses. There's all kinds of things you can add to sort of customize. I also highly recommend humic and fulvic acid, which are usually either in liquid or granular form. Those are great to add as well, because those really help with all different stages of growth.
Okay. We have a question from Anonymous who wants to know, how important is flushing for either soil or hydro systems? Are there any products to help with it? Is it necessary? And how long do I got to do it?
Flushing is very important in any kind of growing, whether it be indoor soil growing or outdoor organics or hydroponics or however you're growing. And basically flushing is the last 2 weeks of growth of flowering stage. It's really a time where you want to leach out a lot of the extra, salts and nutrients and metals and things that are in the plant. So, anything you can do to kind of clear that stuff out is really helpful for the end product. The way that you do it, there are products out there, final flush and stages, things for that last stage, but really plain water is just perfectly fine. pH balanced plain water flushed through the plants for the last 2 weeks will really do wonders to the burnability and just the overall enjoyment that you'll get from the plant. Because like I said, a lot of those excess nutrients are leached out. Mm-hmm. So rather than having like a really harsh burning kind of coal-like experience, it actually burns to a nice clean white ash. So I definitely highly recommend flushing. But as far as products go, just stick with plain water.
Okay. We're speaking with Danny Danko, High Times Senior Cultivation Editor here in our Cultivators Corner. We got time for just a few more questions, and this one comes from New Jersey Leaper. Do dog droppings have any place in a grow for fertilizer?
Dog droppings? Absolutely not. No cat or dog. The problem with carnivorous animal feces is that there's parasites and things that you just don't want. So anything that you wouldn't put in your compost, you really don't want to use as a nutrient like that. So that's why things like, goat droppings or, bat or seabird droppings are okay, and chicken and llamas and things that animals that are vegetarians, their poops are usually much better as far as breaking down nutrients, and they definitely don't have those parasites that you get with carnivorous animals.
Yeah, the only carnivorous animal dropping you should ever use on your garden is outdoor. On the outside perimeter, use cat droppings like a lion or a mountain lion,
like panther piss.
Right, something like that. Really keep those deer away.
All right.
Yeah, but you're you're not using it as a plant food. You're really just using it to keep deer away.
Only protection.
Okay. We have a question from Dis9EMT. Wants to know, do you have any information or pros and cons about a product called the Phototron?
The Phototron, yeah, it's a sort of a beginner unit that it actually advertised in High Times and have been for years and years. A lot of people's sort of gateway into growing. It's very simple. Sort of, you plug it right in, and it's like an octagon-shaped small sort of grow box that you can flower. Basically, it's probably about one plant. They have different varying sizes, but the biggest ones I've seen are great for like one plant, and there's fluorescence up the side. It's a beginner thing to get people, understanding the growth cycles and seeing how, plants flower. And I think, a lot of times people will eventually outgrow that and either create their own sort of growth space or work their way up into a larger capacity grow box. But, no different from the, what's the one they advertise on TV for the herbs and tomatoes and stuff. Those,
oh yeah, those little things, yeah.
Boxes those are basically, just a way for people to realize that, it's not that difficult to produce their own herbs and spices and flowers. And so I consider it sort of like a gateway grow device in some ways.
Right on. Okay, folks, we're going to stop taking calls at this point because I got a few chat questions that I want to make sure we get to. So if you didn't get a chance to get your question on the air this time, we are always visiting with Danny Danko on the 4th Friday of the month. So next month, March 25th, you'll get a chance to ask your questions. Here's an interesting question. I've heard that I should deprive the plants of water in the last few days before harvest. Any reason I should do that?
Some people do that as a way of kind of convincing the plant that it's about to be harvested or it's about to die. And, it does remove some of the moisture. It's sort of a pre-dry thing that people do. I don't think it's really necessary. I don't think it's going to make a huge difference one way or the other, but it is something that people do, and I don't think it could really hurt at that point. When you're 3 or 4 days away from harvest, depriving the plant of water isn't going to, it's not going to hurt anything. And then, like I said, if anything, it's intriguing the possibilities that maybe it will produce a little bit more, essential oil in the fear that, now it's time to go. And it's an interesting theory.
Yeah. Okay. Here's our final question for the day. And it comes from New Jersey Leaper asking about growing outdoors. And do you know of any strains that are better suited to growing in a cold weather climate?
Yeah, well, anything that's indica dominant is going to be better off in a cold weather climate because it stays shorter and stockier, has a shorter flowering time. So if you're, up on higher altitudes or you're in harsh conditions, an indica dominant plant is going to have a lot more chance at survival than a sativa dominant plant. Just because of the length of time that it takes for them to grow, as well as their, overall hardiness in the face of tough conditions. So, I'd go with definitely indica dominant plants in cold weather climates. The growing cycle is shorter, and the plants are going to stay shorter and stockier. Typically, plants you get from Canadian breeders are pretty good at growing outdoors in almost any climate. I've seen them growing in Spain with Canadian seeds, and it's just amazing what they're able to do in full sunshine in Spain with something that's bred for that tough, Vancouver Island climate.
Okay. Well, Danny Danko, High Times Senior Cultivation Editor, author of the High Times Field Guide to Marijuana Strains. Before we let you go, I wanted to let you know that we have a new intro on NORML Show Live. I don't know if you got to catch it, but at the very beginning of the show, we have a new video intro, and you are in it. We've got you smoking a doob in the middle of our intro.
That's awesome. That's great. I heard that a stasher actually put that together, huh?
Yeah. Cannonball put that together for us. I'll send you a copy of the Shockwave file. You can check it out.
Right on.
All right, Danny Danko, thank you so much for joining us here at NORML Show Live. We'll talk to you next month.
Hey, thanks for having me, and happy 40th to NORML.
Thank you so much.
As High Times Senior Cultivation Editor, I'm often called into the field and asked to sample or even identify exotic strains of marijuana in their natural habitat. Now, for the first time, I've compiled more than 120 of my favorite strains into this single field guide designed to fit into your pocket as you travel the world in search of your favorite plant. From a friend's closet grow room to the wilds of Northern California, this single guide covers all of today's best-known strains, plus heirlooms and throwbacks, including High Times quality photos and information on each variety's genetic heritage and growing characteristics, plus my personal notes on aroma, flavor, and potency. So this is Danny Danko, author of the official High Times Field Guide to Marijuana Strains, wishing you good times and great ganja.
5 of the last 7 people to run for president and the last 3 winners have all smoked pot. Marijuana, the gateway drug to the White House.
today, but I don't care. It's 420 somewhere.
Hey folks, welcome back. It's been so long since we've done a cannabis community calendar, but we've got some really cool stuff coming up next week. Some of it Danny Danko already hinted at. Before we get to next week though, let's talk about the weekend. We're going to bring back Cannabis Carrie on the line here. She's got a weekend gig to tell you about.
Well, it's not really cannabis related. I thought we'd talk about it in hour two, but I live in a coastal community, a fishing town at heart, and we have an annual tradition of getting fisher poets together.
Oh, yeah.
Sort of like the cowboy poetry that you and I kind of grew up with.
Yeah.
And if anybody's interested in maritime culture or coastal villages, you really can get completely involved in hearing that. It'll be streaming live on coastradio.org. And I'll be doing some emceeing and maybe some technical stuff from 6 to 10 p.m. on Saturday night.
Awesome.
Check that out.
Oh, that's
I'll
great.
tweet about it.
I'm unfortunately going to miss it because I got a gig tomorrow night. I'll be playing out at
That's
the...
what I heard.
Yeah, playing out the Tigardville station on Saturday, and then I got another gig on Sunday, a benefit gig out on Foster Road. So I'll stream those on the Radical Rust channel if anyone wants to catch those. How about you, John?
I don't have any gigs this weekend. I'm going down to
Comedy.
the Garden. I got comedy tonight. That's true, actually. I got Rob Delaney tonight over at the Woods, a funeral home. So anyone here in Portland, if you're out and about, buy some tickets for this thing. It's going to be it's kind of like a one-man comedy show. It's one story, and it's called Naked and Bloody. You guys will love it, and I will get some stingers from Rob Delaney for the show tonight.
That'll be awesome. And of course, the big news for next week was already mentioned by Danny Danko. NORML is celebrating its 40th anniversary. We were founded on Wednesday, March 2nd. We were founded on March 2nd, 1971.
Right.
And so this March 2nd, next Wednesday, is our 40th birthday. And to celebrate the 40th birthday of NORML next week, we got all sorts of great special stuff for you. First of all, we have uncovered a public service advertisement that was recorded for NORML by Peter Tosh back in 1976. And they're reintroducing this. We're working with Sony Music and the Tosh family estate to re-release this, and coinciding with the April 16th reissue of classic Peter Tosh albums. They're doing a whole campaign for Peter Tosh. The anniversary of Legalize It and all that. They're going to reissue the Tosh albums. And the best news for me on this, just from my own personal point of view, is the PSA that Peter Tosh recorded. When he recorded it in 1976, NORML's address was on M Street in Washington, D.C. But now our address is on K Street in Washington, D.C. So I had to re-record the address because Peter Tosh says, right to NORML, 1640 M Street, and so I had to re-record my voice over it, saying what the real address is. Now the Sony guys are saying, and I sent them the file today, they want to put that file on the re-released Tosh album as a hidden track at the end of the whole album. You let it play for like 3 minutes of silence, and then it'll get to the hidden track. So I am just thrilled that my voice is going to be on a Peter Tosh album. I can't believe it. That's just amazing to me. Other great news that is just amazing to us, and John it has very little of his cranium left today because his head's been blown off so many times. Twice today. The Dirtball will be on our show next Friday from Cottonmouth Kings, and of course he's down in Crook County, down in Bend, Oregon. Mm-hmm. We talked to him today to pre-record the interview. His album drops next Tuesday, March 1st, his new album called Nervous System. We'll be playing some clips from Nervous System on Friday, plus our interview with the Dirtball. And if that wasn't enough, if we didn't jam-pack next week full of rock and reggae stars, we have another star coming up on our show next week, John Popper from Blues Traveler. He's got a solo album that's coming out, and he wants to promote it. Also, John Popper is doing a gig in Colorado Springs, and I've been organizing with the Mile High NORML chapter in Colorado to go down there to Colorado Springs and do a NORML table. John Popper's a big supporter of NORML, big supporter of marijuana legalization, and he specifically asked, he wanted to have NORML there to get the information out to the people at his concert. So next week, John Popper, an archived recording of Peter Tosh and the Dirtball, as well as the rest of our regular guests that we have here on NORML Show Live. We're going to get Keith Stropp on the show on Wednesday to talk about NORML's 40th anniversary and his memories of founding the organization and the struggles we've been through. And also, we've been digitizing a lot of the NORML archives. We'll be bringing you all sorts of archive stuff from the 70s, from the 80s, from the 90s, throughout the history of NORML to give you an idea what we're celebrating. We're celebrating our 40th anniversary. We think it's 40 years too long. Marijuana should have been legalized long ago, but as long as it's illegal, we're going to keep fighting for you, and we're going to get it legalized in our lifetime. I'm Radical Russ for Ganja John and Cannabis Carrie. Thanks for joining us here at Normal Show Live. We'll talk to you next week, and until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is Normal Show Live, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Take it out one more time. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you